Jamestown Foundation, a nonprofit organization specializing in research and analysis on conflict and instability in Eurasia, or Asia-Europe, as one of our colleagues, Alex, wants to say. Since 2003, Mr. Howard has overseen the research and analysis for Jamestown's 3 prominent online publications, Eurasia Daily Monitor, China Brief, and Terrorism Monitor. He has organized over a dozen major conferences on Russia, the Caucasus, Chechnya, Georgia, and Azerbaijan, Pakistan, and the Middle East, Iraq, and Yemen. Mr. Howard has an undergraduate degree from Oklahoma State University in Business Management and received a master's in Soviet and East European Studies from the University of Kansas, both in the 1980s. Mr. Howard has traveled extensively throughout Central Asia and the Caucasus, visiting war-torn Chechnya in 1999, Georgia in 2008, during the Russian invasion, and the contested Azeri province of Karabakh. He has served as an energy consultant to major oil companies operating in the Caspian and Middle East, including Conoco in Iran, Chevron in the Caucasus, and British Petroleum, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Iraq. From 2000 to 2005, Mr. Howard served as the executive director of the American Committee for Peace in Chechnya, a nonprofit organization dedicated to seeking a peaceful resolution of the conflict in Chechnya. ACPC was co-chaired by Dr. Zbigniew Brzezinski, General Alexander M. Haig, and the Honorable Stephen Solage. Mr. Howard has written extensively on Eurasia and published articles in the Wall Street Journal, Jane's Defense Weekly, Jane's Islamic Affairs, and the Central Asia Caucasus Analyst, and other prominent publications on Eurasia, and has provided political commentary on various national news programs. He has briefed senior staff members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and policy planners serving at the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Fluent in Russian, Mr. Howard is also proficient in Turkish and Azerbaijani and has studied Arabic. Please help me welcome Mr. Howard.
Thank you very much, Edith, for that wonderful presentation. It's a great delight to be here back in Kansas. This is a great opportunity for me. I'm always delighted to come back to here. I had great fond memories of Kansas, and I appreciate so much all the opportunities I received here when I studied. I'd like to, there's not a day goes by where I don't really think about Kansas and the importance of the things I learned here. Let's see, get my slides going here.
Slideshow.
Just push this down.
There we go. Sorry. All right. It's you can learn a lot about different parts of the world, but until you come back to a place like Kansas and have an opportunity to reflect on it, the importance of what it offers, do you really appreciate what it is that is here. I titled my presentation today, "The Changing Landscape of Conflict and Instability in Eurasia." The second part was "From KU to the Back and Beyond." And I chose that topic, to the back and beyond, because many of you may not be aware, but there's, in 1939, there was a famous book written by a gentleman by the name of Fitzroy MacLean, who was a British diplomat who left Moscow, escaped the surveillance of the KGB, traveled throughout the Caucasus, made his way to Baku, and then to Central Asia and Afghanistan. And this adventure that he wrote was called Escape to Adventure, and he is the one that coined the term "the back and beyond." The reason why I use that is because my trip to KU really began from the back and beyond when I left the Moscow in the 1980s. I was working as an interpreter at the embassy after studying at the Pushkin Institute in Moscow, and from that time I left the Soviet Union and I came to Kansas and began my studies here. But at that time I felt like I'd really been back to the back and beyond, because at that time the Soviet Union was so closed. I'd gone through the deaths of 2 Soviet leaders at that time, Chernobyl and other events inside the Soviet Union within those two years, including numerous spy scandals. But when I came back to Kansas, I left and I also returned to the back and beyond. that has also been the other part of it seems like that not just studying Russia and the post-Soviet Union, but also the periphery of Russia. And that has also become, in my job currently as president of the Jamestown Foundation, a big title of many things of what I'm doing and what we deal with is this area that's so much off the radar screen. One of the things I've always carried with me that is this phrase by Henry Kissinger really has left a chord with me. It was important because I didn't really appreciate it until after I left Washington and I heard this phrase. But basically, I really felt that being here in Kansas, you can get in the field experience, but not until you get the historical depth of knowledge and understanding about these areas of the world and the deep historical processes that shape it, do you really fully understand it. And then when you get to D.C., there really is no time to think because you're caught in the whirlwind of the policy world, people responding and trying to, always on the go in Washington. And that's why you're forced to, often at these times when you're trying to make sense of X, Y, and Z that's happening in the post-Soviet space, or why Georgia's behaving the way that Georgia is, or why the Chechens are doing this, that's when the historical process, that's when that really come into matter. And I learned that best because I was not as fortunate as many grads. When I finished here in '88 with my master's degree, I was coming in at the end of the Cold War, but I couldn't find a job right away. So what I ended up doing was working in a night shift at UPS in Olathe for over a year. And during that time, I lived in the basement of a professor's home over on Hillview Road. Professor Rose Greaves was in the Middle East History Department at that time. But what was great about that opportunity was that in my time, in between working a night shift at UPS, I had access to the professor's full basement of all of her books and historical works. And so I used that time for that year to try to keep reading and keep trying to get the depth, because I knew that the time would come later on that there would get the chance and opportunity would come, and it did. And now, let's just to tell you a little bit about myself. This is when I went to the back and beyond. This is really the one thing that really changed my life was my 1999 trip to Chechnya. Some of the photos here, and me on the left with President Masadov of Chechnya, war-torn Chechnya in '99, and then President Masadov here with some of his military advisors. And I spent, sometimes you can take a trip to some part of the world and you will remember, because it's such a unique place, you will remember almost every minute of every detail of that trip. And that's what, when I went to Chechnya and spent a week there in 1909, that's really what happened. It really left a big impact on me, and it really changed a lot of aspects of what I was doing. It enabled me to cross paths with Dr. Zbigniew Brzezinski, which has been immense help to me. But so a lot of things change. Basically, just to tell you a little bit about what Jamestown is. Jamestown we're all about informing the policy community about events and trends in societies which are strategically or tactically important in the United States and which frequently restrict access to such information. We utilize indigenous analysis and primary sources, and we deliver without political bias, filter, or agenda. Sometimes it's the only source of information, which should be, but is not always available through the official or intelligence channels, especially in regard to Eurasian terrorism. And so this is what has made Jamestown unique as a foundation. We've been in existence for over 20 some odd years, is that many people in the policy community, because we heavily rely on the use of indigenous source material, that come to view us as a primary source of information. Something that I'm very proud of. We were founded in 1982. We had many of the Soviet defectors that when I became president in 2003, but in 1982 up until the death of the founder of the foundation in 2002, we had worked with almost every major defector that had come through during the Cold War. Many of these famous books, Breaking with Moscow, were helped written by the Jamestown Foundation at that time. Like a lot of places, and when the Soviet Union fell apart, Jamestown began doing other things. So we started publishing in the film. We started developing publications. We have a vast readership. Everything's free and online. And so Jamestown is heavily read by people in the White House, NSC, State Department, various branches of the intelligence community. Even extends to the Russian and Chinese Foreign Ministry. We've had two notes of protest have been filed against the Jamestown Foundation by the Russian Foreign Ministry, which we're quite proud of, because obviously we're getting under their skin with what we do and what we write about. And so that's always something for me. We have about 71,000 people visit our website each month. And so our number of subscriptions actually is higher than the statistics here. So we have about 10,000 people read our Eurasia Daily Monitor each day. So we're quite extensively read. We have 200 analysts who write for our publication. They're located in 40 different countries of the world. Average age of our analysts is 10 to 15 years of experience in the subjects they write about. If you look at the CIA and all the hiring that's been done there after post 9/11, you have 50% of all the analysts at CIA have less than 5 years experience. So when you look at that level of expertise and you look at the linguistic skills and the knowledge level of the analysts who write for Jamestown, they certainly have a lot of depth, and a lot of it's historically based because many of them have been writing and traveling in this region of the world they've been writing about for a very long time. So we really distinguish ourselves through our analyst reliance on the use of indigenous source material, and it makes us very much valued and widely read. So, on that said, this experience in working with Jamestown has been, something that's really it's been a great opportunity because I have this ability to go out and do research and analysis. And when I was a grad student here at Kansas, the information revolution that has occurred and the ability to do research and analysis has changed so much. I was on the plane riding out here, and I was reminiscing about the times when I would go over and dig out microfiche in one of the halls there just to read FBIS, so Foreign Broadcast Information Service transcripts. The great challenge of trying to do research on the internet. Now today, you can do the research from your computer, you can read all the online newspapers, right, and you can work and operate in Denver, Colorado, or Olathe, Kansas, and perform analysis and cover trends and developments in these areas that you've written about, where you don't have to be in one specific location. And that's truly what has led to a revolution in how analysis is done and what makes Jamestown so different. Now we're being completely overwhelmed by blogs with us offering diverse views and opinions. I mean, a virtual flood of information, and our ability to try to understand this very important part of the world, and all this information is coming in. And but it also creates a lot of opportunities because young students can graduate from a school and go to spend a year living in, say, Ush and Kyrgyzstan, and come back, and they can quickly write up an 800-word article and get published on the internet and get this material into the mainstream where this person can develop a reputation as an analyst. Unlike the old days where they had this tedious process of going through the journals, trying to get something published, and that has truly transformed the nature of how we look at analysis and how we inform people about what's going on. I mean, you have Johnson's List, hundreds of thousands of readers that read that, and so all this explosion in industry and information is very important. But what makes Jamestown unique at this time is because we have a collection of 4 articles in each issue in our Eurasia Daily Monitor. We try to tell our readers everything in a very short span of 4 articles, what's going on in the world. And that's why a lot of policymakers like us, because one senior level person, State Department, told me, he said, Glenn, I can read on my desktop information that comes in into my inbox, and that article in Jamestown's Eurasia Daily Monitor would tell me everything that I need to know. But for me to read the equivalent of that information, I have to walk halfway around the building in the State Department. I have to go get read in, and then I have to get read out. And then when I get read in and read similar type of information that's available from the intelligence community, he says, Glenn, I've wasted an hour out of my day. And he says, I can read what comes across my desk in Jamestown in 20 minutes. It tells me everything I want. So it's that type of knowledge and understanding about how Jamestown can affect and how this open source information is changing our lives. It's really the great jump in information that we've had since KU, since my days at KU in 1988. Now I'd like to, what I was asked to do today was kind of identify some of the trends in Eurasia that I see that are emerging. It's always the Soviet Union and the post-Soviet space has undergone a traumatic transition. In the security environment, we have seen from 1991 to 2010, we've seen 9 different wars and conflicts inside the borders of the post-Soviet space. You have the wars in Karabakh in 1993. You have the war in Abkhazia, the Abkhaz-Georgia War in 1992, the Transnistria-Moldova conflict, all of what they refer to as the frozen conflicts, the Tajik Civil War 1992-94, the first Russo-Chechen War 1994-95. 1999, you have the second rebellion inside Uzbekistan with the rise of the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan and its efforts to undermine the Uzbek government. Then in 1999, you have the second Russo-Chechen War emerge. Then in August 2008, you have the Russo-Georgian War. And also in there, you have the Ossetian-Ingush conflict in 1993. So you have all these various conflicts going on inside the post-Soviet space. And that has made the security environment in this region very, very difficult. And part of it, I think, is we lack so much information. I was just talking to Tom Wilhelm the other day. And it's ironic that the Tajik Civil War was fought in 1994, and yet we still don't have a basic history textbook documenting the history of the Tajik Civil War. So things like that it make it very difficult for students to try to understand what's going on, because there still tends to be this kind of Russocentric approach to analyzing developments in what's going on within Russia. But the conflict side of parts of Central Asia, the Caucasus, still remain very much ignored. Now, one of the key things about these wars that I've listed from 1991 to 2010, of the 7 trends that I see emerging in Eurasia that define the security environment, the first trend that I see is that Russia under Putin is a territorially revisionist power bent on reclaiming its dominance in the post-Soviet space. And that's why this war in Georgia, why I have it on my slides, why this was so important. Because the war, all of these conflicts are about territorial divisions, and in some cases, not all of them, it's been fostered by the Russians and Putin, and maneuvering to try to facilitate and foment this kind of unrest and conflict. And this is why this is territorial revisionist power is very important, because in the case of Georgia, losing its territory of Abkhazia and South Ossetia was very psychologically left a very deep impact has left a deep impact on the Georgian people. The second trend that I would like to talk about that I see emerging in the security trends is the growth of nationalism and state development. The Baltic states, Ukraine, Belarus, especially Georgia and Azerbaijan, is putting these countries on a collision course with Russia. This is a collision course of some form of renewed conflict that that may reemerge here in the future, and it's very much reminiscent to me. I was talking to Professor Chinchilla earlier today about the importance of what happened in the 1920s. Many of you in Poland, Lithuania, Ukraine, this whole growth of nationalism, and especially Poland's wars with Russia in the 1920s, it was very much fostered by this type of growth of nationalism and an effort to try to restrain Poland. And this is the type of thing of the growth of nationalism that I see very much happening today in Georgia, and in countries like Georgia. Very much growth of nationalism is very much, in fact, the Georgia War was so reminiscent of the 1939 Russo-Finnish War, and many similarities to that conflict. And you have today in Georgia, you have a lot of Georgians studying and talking about that conflict. What I'm going to do here now, the third trend that I see emerging is in terms of the 7 trends in Eurasia that are affecting the security environment, is the North Caucasus is spiraling out of Russia's control. There are 7 low to high level insurgencies in each of the North Caucasus republics. The North Caucasus, I believe, is becoming a borderland of Russia. It still exists in paper as a part of Russia. And in fact, there is a professor, Valery Solovoy, Paul Goebel in his Windows on Eurasia on August 22nd quoted this Professor Solovoy. He's a professor at Migamore, he was formerly at the Gorbachev Foundation, but he said that within his lifetime, Russia will let the North Caucasus go its own way and be independent of Russia. And this is a comment made just several weeks ago that is very, highly reflective of the situation in North Caucasus and how, since the wars in Chechnya and the situation in Dagestan, Eurasia, and all of this is so much spinning out of control. I did put in my slides, but I even have a very unique photo of Russia's return and usage of armored trains. They've returned to the North Caucasus, and transportation of military units is now occurring by armored trains. You haven't seen this since Dr. Zhivago in the Russian Civil War, and some of this stuff is really quite astounding. The fourth trend I see emerging, and the seven trends in Eurasia that define the security environment, will be the 2014 Sochi Olympics. This is truly going to be a magnet for conflict with the rise of Circassians. Those of you who don't know what the Circassians are, many of you, same way in the 1960s, people hadn't heard of Azerbaijanis or Georgians or Armenians. But the Circassians are basically make up about 500,000 people in the Northwest Caucasus. They're divided into three ethnic republics. Why are they so important? Because they have close to 7 to 9 million in their diaspora. You have large numbers of their live in Turkey, close to 5 to 6 million in Turkey alone. There's several 100,000 live in Jordan. There's over 10,000 live in Israel. And they're scattered around, and there's a very strong and very powerful diaspora. And they're very much opposed to the Sochi Olympics. And now you're starting to see military or militant movements emerge in these Circassian republics. And what Stalin did is he divided all of these republics to separate them and to make them weak. And he put them, I don't have it in my slides, but he basically to isolate them from the Russian seaboard, from the Black Sea. And so there's a vast rise in ethnic nationalism among the Circassians, just like you saw among the Georgians prior to the breakup of the Soviet Union. You're starting to see this now, and it's really creating a lot of problems for Russia and the North Caucasus. The fifth trend that I see emerging in Eurasia, China and Russia are on a collision course in Central Asia. I believe this is one of the most paramount trends. Is with China is locking up, has been vastly improving its trade and economic relations with Central Asia, and it's also developed security relations with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Through these locking up the resources, and especially Turkmenistan. Turkmenistan is very important because China's locked up a lot of the gas reserves there. And that is very important because Russia's gas production is declining. And a lot of the gas that Russia's sending to Europe is coming from Turkmenistan. And so Turkmenistan has really thrown in its lot with the Chinese. Kazakhstan has very much become very close to the Chinese. And you have the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is an organization that has basically an umbrella for China and Central Asia. And I think that this is becoming a very important development. I actually was in Shanghai several years ago, and one of the Russians that was attending the conference told me that the only reason Russia joined the Shanghai Cooperation Organization was to keep an eye on the Chinese. This is becoming a very important issue. China's building a railroad now through Afghanistan, and so this the whole issue of how China is moving in Central Asia, where these countries develop alternative economic relations, is vastly affecting the security environment. It's not on the surface, but it's very much underneath the surface, and how the Chinese, they've even conducted joint military exercises through the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Central Asia. But this is becoming, I think, is an issue as the United States pulls out of the region. These countries, especially Central Asian states, are looking to China as some type of patron power that can counter Russian influence. And the problem has been is that the United States is pretty much, I think, once it withdraws from Afghanistan, will become less important in Central Asia. Therefore, these other powers will be, especially with China, will become more important. One of the interesting trends you see developing too is China-Belarus, China-Moldova. Chinese lending vast sums of money to the government of Belarus and Moldova. as China tries to build a counter to the European Union. It's using these East European countries as a kind of a springboard into the European Union. And so they're donating vast sums of money to these regimes to keep them in power, and also this economic assistance helps them. And also that's very much as a burr under the saddle of Putin, who doesn't like this because it makes these countries a little bit even more independent. So I see this, so this is one of the major trends I see occurring. And you see on the other hand, the flip side, Russia's just maintaining a toehold in Central Asia. This development in Kyrgyzstan with the recent riots of Osh once again confirmed that Russia did not have a military security capability to project power into Central Asia. I think that's one of the key trends that you see emerging, and I think that's it may or may not continue, but it really says a signal that in some ways Russia is declining as a power in Central Asia. And in fact, I had Russian friends who were telling me, about how they were reading all the opinion polls in Moscow about how, during the rioting in Osh, and where the Kyrgyz government was trying to beg Moscow to try to intervene. And all the opinion polls in Moscow, where all the websites were saying, the Russian public was opposed to intervention there. And that's maybe partially because of Russia really doesn't see itself as being a part of Central Asia, that it has a national interest in a republic like Osh. A republic like Kyrgyzstan, where Osh is. So this is a very important development, and I think that it bears in mind when you see China expanding so vastly in the region. Sixth trend that I see emerging is the rise of Turkey as a potential counterweight to Russian influence in the Caucasus, particularly. I see a growing Turkish-China alignment in the region as Turkey is increasingly becoming a great power. Its negotiations with Iran and alignment with Iran on the nuclear dispute with the United States, and its defiance of the United States and the events that occurred as a result of the Gaza flotilla incident, where Turkey is increasingly becoming a country in the region that is becoming, through a variety of different mechanisms, is becoming a power to deal with in the region. And I think in the Caucasus, it still remains to be seen how much of a power they will be, but they're becoming deeply involved in this area, and I think they are on a collision course at some point with Russia in the Black Sea region. Not quite yet, but at some point, and it's particularly over energy issues. If I have a map here, I'll go through. This is a part of the U.S. strategic interest in South Caucasus. This is part of a railway project from Azerbaijan that is being developed from Baku to called the Kars Railway that will be bypassing Armenia. This is a very important strategic project. Then we have the Baku-Jihan pipeline exporting 1.2 million barrels of oil. Then you have the Nabucco gas pipeline to Europe. And then you have the Trans-Caspian gas pipeline, which they've been talking about between Turkmenistan and Azerbaijan. So this is a very important part of the rivalries in the region. And Turkey is with the Nabucco gas pipeline project wants to control the gas going through Turkey from Central Asia, not through Central Asia, but also Central Asia and Azerbaijan from its offshore gas projects in the Caspian. It wants to control an energy lever that controls all the energy gas flow to Europe. And this is where I believe at some point it's going to put it on itself on a collision course with Moscow. Now, the last trend that I see emerging in this region that's very important is the Ukraine-Russia dispute over Crimea. I think that that this is going to be probably when at some point will become within the next 3 or 4 years. I think it's going to become a very potentially another war in Crimea because of Russia's determination to regain control over Crimea and its efforts to control Ukraine. And that's the whole scheme of the dynamics is something that I think that the scenario I used to call was for a new Crimean war. Now what you see now happening and occurring in Ukraine, obviously with the new government, it's been this massive tilt towards Moscow. But at some point, there's going to be reverberations from that and repercussions from that inside Ukraine. And so the issue over Russia's drive to regain control over Ukraine and Crimea is all part of the Russian national idea of what is being promoted by President Putin. or former President Putin, but now Prime Minister Putin. But this is the type of thing, this is the 1-7 trend, this is the one where I see the conflict emerging. And I think it's very important to kind of study and analyze that. In fact, Jamestown Foundation, Taras Kuzio are getting ready to release a report on the struggle for Crimea, which he calls Europe's